could hurdle. And this year she proved she had the strength. Bronze medalist last time, gold medalist this time. Dion Hemmings is the Olympic champion.
You just experienced a Jamaican Olympic triumph in Jamaica Gold, a golden spotlight.
Brought to you by Horton's Pharmacy. Horton's RX Pack for better medication management.
None of mercy. This one is very classic, dedicated to all the schoolers who are taking beats.
If you've ever struggled to pass an exam, then you'll know that students today are under great pressure to get good grades and secure qualification needed to move on to higher education. The problem is that too many students are struggling alone and could really benefit from connecting with hardworking teachers and other bright students in other parts of the country and the region. Join me, Dennis Brooks, this and every Friday evening from 8 to 9, with a repeat on Saturday morning from 8 to 9. For the A-Team, a study group on radio, my team of teachers, students, and experts will break down the syllabus, giving you information, tips, and past paper questions that will help you get top grades in your upcoming exams. Follow us on Facebook Live and on Twitter and be a part of the community. It's the A-Team, Fridays at 8 p.m. with a repeat at 8 o'clock on Saturday morning. It's your free extra class on radio and social media. And it's right here on Nationwide 90 FM, the revolution in media.
Me sing, every pressure on no more. You illiterate and foolish, you might on a cook. And you not gonna get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me gunny with a purse.
Good evening, Jamaica. It's Friday, the 24th of May, 2024. This evening, you are joining me, Damien Scarlett, as I continue to carry you through the A-Team radio show, sitting in on behalf of Dennis Brooks. So wherever you are tuning into our show this evening, we want to say good night to you and to the students as well across the island as they get prepared for their examinations, or they continue to prepare for their examination. So, of course, the A-Team radio show is our on-air study program. And if it's the first time that you're tuning into this show, I want to say welcome to you. And if you're listening to us on the dial, or if you're watching us live on Nationwide 90 FM YouTube channel, then we want to say welcome to you as well. We turn our attention to Cape Law, and we're focusing on Unit 1 as we get ready for the upcoming examination on the 27th. That's on Monday, May the 27th. The students will be sitting the Cape Law exam, and that's the Unit 1 paper 2. Now, oftentimes when we talk about law, persons perhaps wonder, why is it that students need to study Cape Law? But, law is an essential tool for ensuring that there's relative stability, peace, and order in our society. And as we go through life, we do need to understand the principles and the regulation as it relates to the law of the land and the services that we can get out of the law profession. And so I have with me this evening Matthew Hyatt, who is an attorney at law, and has taught Cape Law over the years, actually 8 years teaching this course, and he has taught at the Queen's School as well as Campion College. So we see that our guest this evening is well rounded and qualified enough to talk to us and to carry us through this evening. Welcome, Matthew, to the show. How are you?
Hi, thank you very much. I'm good.
Wonderful. All
right.
Evening. Good evening to you. And, we just want to go right into it because the exam is coming up next week, Monday. And you've had an experience working with the students and preparing them for the lessons. What is it like around this time for them as they gear towards the law exam? Do they feel pressured?
Nerve-wracking.
Okay.
Anxiety filling their minds in terms of which questions will be coming on the exam, how to answer the questions, or, perhaps some of the topics that they have not yet studied, they are trying to gear themselves up to do the last-minute preparation.
Right.
But at this juncture, it's necessary to just go through the various flashcards that you would have been making throughout the year. Go through the notes. Leave the heavy text behind and focus on the specific topics and looking at the syllabus to ensure that you're guided by the syllabus and to cover as much as possible, because the exam no longer offers an option. You only get one question per module, and so you really don't know which question is coming on the exam.
Okay, so they have to really prepare and be all-rounded and prepared for anything when they go into that examination room.
That's correct.
Right. Just talk to me a little bit about the structure of the Paper 2 exam. What is that like, or what does it look like for the students?
The Paper 2 exam will be based on short answer questions, really. One question per module, and you have to answer all the questions. So they have abandoned the system where you had two options and you have to choose one.
Right.
So you really have to study broadly and look at all the areas to ensure that when you're in the exam, you're not blindsided by a particular question that you would not have been prepared for.
Right.
Question is I believe it's 2 hours and 30 minutes. I think the time has remained the same. So the students have, pretty decent time to complete the exam.
Okay, great. And so they have to use that time wisely. But this evening we're focusing on Unit 1. So Unit 1 is really public law, as we kind of, dive into looking at Caribbean legal systems. But for the purpose of our revision and to help our students, what are the areas you'd like to zone in on this evening?
You see, this is a difficult part.
Yes.
Because you really don't know. And I can only say that what I've seen is that the questions that would have come the previous year,
Right.
examiners are less likely to bring those questions back this year. So, for example, law and morality came last year, I believe, for Module 1.
Mm-hmm.
For Module 2, I think that they had brought judicial review, which is very big, on an aspect called legitimate expectation. And for Module 3, they had looked at offenses against the property. Those topics are topics that the examiners may not bring again this year. I'm not saying that students should abandon those topics completely, because there are questions that will feature in the multiple choice exam.
Right.
But in terms of the Paper 2, I think that there are other questions that the examiner may want to focus on. For example, jury, the issue of jury and jury selection has been a very topical issue in Jamaica particularly.
Yes.
That's a question that is likely to come in terms of jury selection. We have seen cases and questions on the CCJ versus the Privy Council, another very topical issue right throughout the Caribbean. So those are topics that can come as well. But I don't want to tell you listeners that, you should not study this topic or you should study that topic. My approach in preparing the students is to say to them, you have to study everything.
Yes.
And, spearfishing, you have to be specific and look at the syllabus and allow the syllabus to guide you in terms of your preparation.
Okay, so in this aspect of the module, as we look at the jury selection, then the students would need to know some of the processes as it relates to the eligibility and the disqualification, or what you perhaps call the advantages and the disadvantages of the jury system.
That's correct.
Right. Okay, so students, if you're listening and you're going to be doing law on Monday, please ensure that you grasp the principles as it relates to jury selection. But I'm going to just give over this little time to you, Sir Matthew. But I'm going to take a short break, and when I come back, you can just guide us through that part of the module. This is the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide 90 FM. We'll be right back after this.
Send me granny with a purse. I eat you off the choke. If I see them, I hold your red and big tonight. You puke, me look and say, book. When I feel pressure
Health starts with proper hydration. Hydrate your body with Hydrate. Hydrate is purified natural water from rocks 110 feet below the ground. You have never tasted water so great, yet so affordable. Yes, taste and experience it for yourself. Water at its best. Hydrate. Available also as purified alkaline water and ultra-purified distilled water. Bottled by LLNSCS Limited, a subsidiary of Max Pharmaceuticals. Call 876-983-6466.
Teachers, looking for a loan? Look no further. At Chris and Charles, you can borrow up to $2 million without a guarantor. We understand the difference your job makes, so here's a little extra support just for you. We know the best teachers teach from the heart, and at Chris and Charles, we're here to help you succeed. Give us a call at 876-920-4189 or WhatsApp 876-838-9028 for loan options. Conditions apply. When you think loans, think Chris and Charles.
Outperform, outlast. With top performance. Jackama. Reliable, full stop, not comma. We have the expertise for drilling and demolition. We have the power tools for plumbers and electricians. Fancy select tools, free parts and free repairs. Free parts, free repairs. 2 to 3 years. Hilton, available at Delta Supply, 106 Hagley Park Road. Call us at 876-302-61114. Delta Supply. We service what we sell.
Watch for Shelley and Fraser Price.
I stay locked to the Olympics because, of course, I'm Jamaican. What you mean? Me, I have to tune into the Olympics, man. Because I'm always busy, but what? I have to know when Sherika Jackson beat Shakari.
Brother, I have to have every notification for the Olympics. I want to hear every run.
Now Sherika Jackson coming
every jump.
Oh, that is absolutely huge of Wade Pinkham.
Every fling, live.
So, take us then.
Nothing can miss me.
We're always on the move.
So while we're driving, run, Elaine, run.
Jogging. Yes. Run, Watson, win again.
Watson is now a world champion.
Or even at work.
Quick, the race has started.
We can't miss a beat because we keep it locked
to the only station
for the Paris Olympics.
Nationwide.
90
FM.
Nationwide 90.1, 90.3, 90.5, 90.7 and 90.9 and on YouTube at Nationwide 90 FM Live. Nationwide, the new revolution in media.
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide 90 FM. You're listening to the voice of Damon Scarlett, sitting in for Dennis Brooks, and we are looking at Cape Law, specifically Unit 1, as the students get ready for their exams come Monday morning. So my guest this evening is attorney at law and experienced teacher, Matthew Hyatt, in this discipline. Matthew, just before the break, we were looking at Module 1, specifically jury selection, as we were looking at the broader focus of the Caribbean legal system. So I'm just going to allow you to just carry us through this part of the show and the specific areas that you'd want the students to focus on.
All right. So as it relates to jury, and if you will permit me, if I could just speak a little bit on the jury aspect.
Yes.
Is that students ought to know that ordinary persons, regular persons can be selected for jury. There's no need to have any particular knowledge on the law. So
Okay.
It is the average Joe that is on the road who is going to sit as a juror of your peers to select whether or not the person, and listen to the evidence and to see whether or not the person is guilty or innocent.
Yes.
But students ought to know that there are certain category of persons that may not be selected as a juror. So, for example, if it is that you have been convicted of an offense or you're in the court to be tried for an offense, you can't be a juror. Judges, lawyers, police officers, they can't sit as a juror. So you need to look at who it is that can become a juror. If it is that a juror, for example, has been selected and the juror in the middle of a trial gets seriously ill,
Yes.
then that juror can also be exempted. And you would need to say to the examiner how it is. For example, flu, there was a case during, right after COVID, a juror got COVID and the entire jury had to be discharged, and the trial had to start over from the beginning.
Yes.
And of course, you have to appreciate that the jury serves a very important aspect in the dispensation of justice, in that you have to look to see that there is fairness in the justice system.
Right.
And of course, you have to pay attention to the advantages and the disadvantages of a trial by jury. We have to note also that persons on a jury do not necessarily have a legal background. That may be a disadvantage. Jurors may also have their own personal biases. You might
Yes.
have a juror that says, I don't like Vybz Kartel. And because they're sitting on the panel, irrespective of what the evidence may be, they may find that Kartel is guilty, for example.
So as you say that, Sir Matthew, so what then are the best practices, or how can we mitigate that, or or it's not? Are we never sure of that? What will happen?
Well, to be honest, you won't really truly know. In
Yes.
practice, there is what we call the empanelment of the jury, and both the defense and the prosecution have the right to challenge a particular juror with and without cause. That is not something that will be tested in Cape. So I'm just speaking generally now.
Yeah. Right.
But you really can truly mitigate those circumstances. The judge, however, in the U.S., they will sequester the jury, and so the jury may stay at a hotel for the entire duration of the trial. In Jamaica, the judge will say to the jurors, members of the jury, remember your oath, you're not to speak to anyone outside of the jury about the case. But of course, we're
Right.
human beings, and I'm pretty sure that there may be persons who go home and they have pillow talk and they tell their husbands about the trial and so on. But it's very difficult to mitigate that, really.
Okay.
And of course, another disadvantage for jurors is that they're not necessarily properly paid. In Jamaica, I believe it was last week, the minister had highlighted that the fee for the jurors has increased now from $2,000 per day to $6,000. And so a lot of persons would have opted not to
To
go
be a
on to the
juror.
juror
Right.
because of perhaps the money. You are a little lady on the road selling at the market is making much more than probably $6,000
Right.
for the day. So the students have to dive deep into the advantages and the disadvantages. And another possible question that may be asked is, what are the advantages of a trial by jury versus a trial by a judge alone? At the parish court, most of the trials are conducted by a judge alone, where the judge is acting as judge and juror.
Right.
And at the Supreme Court, for most offenses, there is a jury. So those are questions that students ought to look at specifically when they're looking at the topic of the jury, for example.
Okay,
Another
so
possible-
before you go, would they be asked, for example, to define what a jury trial is?
Not necessarily. I don't suspect that is a
Okay.
question that we asked.
Okay.
Yes. It's more looking at disqualification of a juror,
Right.
who can be a juror, who can become a juror, and the advantages and the benefits of the jury system, and looking at the differences between a jury, trial by jury,
Right.
and so on.
Okay. We got that one. So I'm learning the processes as I go along.
Yes, it's for everyone, really.
Right.
And another possible topic that may feature as well is alternative dispute resolution. looking at how it is that we resolve disputes without going to the court. And our shortening is called ADR, and we're looking at, for example, what is mediation versus what arbitration is. Mm-hmm. And so a possible question may say, especially in the multiple choice, that John Brown doesn't want to carry his sister to court. What other method they can use to resolve the issue of the money that is being owed to him? And one possible way is by way of mediation, where you have an independent third party coming in, and both sides will discuss the issues and try to resolve it. And the examiner wants you to look at what are the advantages and possible disadvantages of alternative dispute resolution. And I think there are more advantages than disadvantages here. Because litigation, going to court can be very lengthy, as you know.
Yeah, I agree with that point. And as I was sitting here listening to you, Matthew, my mind just goes on the fact that there are a number of disputes that happen across our society daily. And in our schools as well. And if we had a broader knowledge and understanding on and see the importance of mediation, because I mean the Supreme Court in terms of the procedure rules does speak towards that as it relates to settling matters by way of mediation rather than going through the court system. So you see that even from the law aspect of it itself, that the principles play out in everyday life.
Definitely. Definitely. I think, perhaps in all the schools they should have, I'm not sure if they do, a program where you have a mediation program, especially where you may have students who fight before a student is even suspended, that they should go to mediation. I'm not sure if they have that. I'm speaking openly. But that's a possible topic that can come, and you have to look at the advantages and disadvantages. And for every single topic, you must know the definition, So you need to know what is mediation. And it may be the definition normally is a mark, so you don't need to write more than a line or two. I think at this juncture, though, I should say to the students that you need to examine the various marks that is allocated for each question, because the marks will then determine how much you write, and the cases, the question may say to you to use a decided case. And the case is possibly a mark, but if it is that you forget the cases, you can write that in a decided case, X, Y, and Z happened. Yes. But please do not make up any case names, John versus Brown, because the examiners will see that and mark you down for that.
Okay, so they do need to have an understanding of what the definition of terms are, and to be able to apply that through how they express in terms of using their critical thinking and analytical skills as they approach the question.
That's correct.
All right, so I know that is one particular aspect in terms of when you look at the judicial precedents. Is there something else that under that they need to pay close attention to?
Sorry, you repeat that again? You said something?
The judicial, the precedent, is there anything else relating to that they would need to pay close attention to?
Well, for judicial precedent, you need to know what is the purpose of judicial precedent.
Yeah.
And students need to pay particular attention to the differences between what is binding precedent and the doctrine of what is called stare decisis, meaning let the decision stand, and what is a persuasive precedent. So when you're looking, for example, at the court structure, where we have the parish court at the lowest level, and then we have the Supreme Court, then the Court of Appeal, and then the Privy Council. In some countries, they have the CCJ as their final appellate court. When we talk about judicial precedent, we mean that any decision that the court makes above, then the lower courts are bound to follow that decision. So, for example, if the Privy Council should make a decision today, then the Court of Appeals, which is below, is bound to follow that decision, because judges are not to make laws. The judges are to interpret the laws. And so that's what precedent, looks at. Judges are following the previous decision to then make a decision as to what is the outcome in terms of a sentencing that I should impose for a particular individual. And they will look at other cases before to see how it is that they are guided.
All right, I want you to hold that point for me, Matthew. We're going to take another break, and when we come back, we pick up that discussion on the judicial precedents. We are looking at Cape Law, Unit 1. Much more when we come back. This is the A-Team Radio Show. Soon come.
Variety is the spice of life. That's not just true for entertainment, it's true for investing too. While stocks, bonds, and cash are effective, there are other credible investment options out there. These are alternative investments, ranging from digital options like cryptocurrencies to old school investments like gold, real estate, and private equity. You can invest on your own or via a fund with a curated portfolio of investment options.
Visit barita.com/opportunities for more growth coach insights.
Nationwide 90 FM is at it again. Team Revolution will clear every hurdle and sprint to the finish line as we cover the games of the 33rd Olympiad from Paris, the city of love.
3 meters clear, 5 meters clear, and away he goes. He continues on his way towards another gold medal. 5 gold medals, 5 world records.
Nationwide's coverage is powered by our diamond sponsor, Fosrich, fostering rich customer service across all locations island-wide.
It's the weekend and the youth are taking over the airwaves. Yes, we are the new voices and faces of the Talk Up You radio show. The voice of the Jamaican youth right here on Nationwide 90 FM.
After a busy week of work and school, come and wine with Jamaica's #1 youth radio show.
We're bringing you entertainment, fun facts, and staying true to youth development and advocacy.
Catch the action each and every Saturday as we roll out buzzy segments. What say you?
Youth for chat,
life skills,
global connect, and Bust the Youth.
That's the Talk Up Youth radio show. Saturdays 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Nationwide 90 FM. Talk Up Youth, Miss Effie.
Talk Up Youth. Don't miss it.
Me sing.
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide 90 FM. This is Damon Scarlett, and I have with me attorney at law Matthew Hyatt, and he's carrying us through the Cape Law Unit 1 syllabus as we help our students get ready for their exams. Just before the break, we were speaking about the judicial precedent, and from my understanding, because I'm learning as I'm going along, is that the judicial precedent or precedent rather, refers to the principle that courts should follow decisions made in previous legal cases. And we understand that once the... Sir Matthew, did you say the Supreme Court or is it the Privy Council?
Privy Council.
Right, so if the Privy Council makes a particular decision or ruling, then you're saying that the courts below, so that comes under like the hierarchy of courts, that they have to also follow the same precedent that has been set.
You got it.
All right, great. I could do Cape Law then.
you would get a 1, I'm sure.
Thank you, sir. But all right, so let's pick up back on that in terms of the judicial precedent then.
Yes, so students ought to look at the differences between binding precedent and persuasive precedent and the advantages and disadvantages of each. The Albert Fidagio text is very instructive on that, and it outlines it very clearly, the advantages and disadvantages, so they can look to that to get more information on that. But those are the questions that they really need to pay attention to, and those are the questions that will carry the bulk of the marks, if it is that it should come. So when you're looking at judicial precedent, you need to look also at the court structure. If, perfectly fine if you draw a little diagram to show the hierarchy of the courts as well.
Okay, so that's a little extra tip there that the students can apply in the writing process. So that's really one of the questions or the areas that you wanted to focus on in terms of Module 1. I know another area would focus on now the separation of powers. So let's talk about that a little bit.
All right. So in looking at the separation of powers, you have to look primarily at the three arms of government, and you want to look at the role and function of the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. You can't look at separation of powers and not know the role and function of each. And primarily, when you're looking at separation of powers, you ought to know the facts of Hines versus the Queen, the seminal case involving the gun court in Jamaica. And there are questions that normally flow from that case. So you want to look at the case of Hines when you're looking at separation of powers. But importantly, when you're looking at that topic, you also want to look at the independence of the judiciary. Questions will almost invariably flow from that, looking to see why is it that the judiciary ought to be independent. And it is really for fairness. So you want to focus on the security of tenure for judges, how it is that the judges are appointed, and looking also at where it is that judges are paid from. The judges are paid from what is called the consolidated fund. It's normally a question that features in the multiple choice exam as well. So when you look at separation of powers, you want to look at the independence of the judiciary. I'm not certain if that topic itself is in the Unit 1 study guide. So, but it will come if it is that they should bring separation of powers.
Okay. All right. So they need to know and the categories there. And one of the things I got from what you were saying is that it also helps with the checks and the balances of this within the system.
Yes, it certainly does. So the three arms of government, in theory, do not intermingle, and they ought to act independently of each other. So, for example, the executive body is responsible for making policies. The legislature, otherwise known as the parliament, its purpose is to make laws for the peace, order, and governance of the land. I believe Section 49, I believe, of the Constitution says that. And then you have the judiciary, which is responsible for the interpretation of the law and executing. So you have to look at the various arms, know the role and function of each, persons who make up each arm of government, and have that ready, maybe on a flashcard, on a notepad. And, pre-write your answers so that you have that in a very succinct form for the examiners.
Okay, and would they need to write that in any particular order, Sir Hyatt, or
no particular order at all.
Okay. All right, so looking at the branches of government, as you said, so the legislative system, in terms of, the legislator, which is responsible for making the laws, then you said the executive, which is responsible for executing the laws, and then now the judiciary, which is responsible for the interpretation of the laws. So you see that breakdown within the system then?
That's correct.
Okay. One of the questions that perhaps I wanted to ask you though, for persons who are, pursuing law, then if they are so inclined, would they more like to, for example, to find a job more in the executive or versus the judiciary?
For persons who wish to pursue law?
Right.
It depends. It depends on what the person wants to do.
Okay.
If it is a situation whereby you want to go into the courts and you want to become an advocate, then you may want to find yourself in the judiciary, or starting out at a law firm.
Okay.
Where you can get exposed to certain type of litigation matters and go into court.
Right. Well, my reason for asking, because, as I listen to you and as I kind of focus on the breakdown, is that it was one thing to make the laws and to execute them, but then the interpretation of the laws does require the individuals to have that requisite knowledge and to pay close attention to what the law says in order for them to communicate it.
Yes, that's correct.
Right, so that's what really kind of struck my mind there. So in terms of the Module 2, is there any other likely angle that the examiners might ask this question or the topic of separation of powers?
In my mind so far, I'm not thinking of any additional thing. Role and function, looking at the independence of the judiciary, looking at the case of Hines versus the Queen. You can't study separation of powers and not know the case of Hines. So they go hand in hand.
All right. Well, thank you for that. And so, students, please bear that in mind. And we're getting some good tips here as we look at Cape Law Unit 2. So we'd have looked at the jury system or the jury selection process, looking at the advantages, the disadvantages, and now we're learning that in terms of the separation of powers, then you have to have an understanding of the roles of each category as it relates to the legislature, the executive, the judiciary. Now, I know in terms of Module 3, Matthew, that it focuses on the offenses against the person.
Focuses on criminal law.
Criminal law, right. So let's talk about that a little bit then.
Okay. Any particular area you'd wish for me to go to? Or?
No, man, I'll leave it up to you to decide.
Okay. Well, for criminal law, it looks at the starting out at the elements of a crime. So looking at the basics in terms of what is necessary for a person to be liable for an offense. And so students ought to know the basics in terms of what is actus reus, what is the mens rea of a crime. The actus reus is looking at the voluntary act, and the mens rea is looking at the guilty mind, the intention, and both must coincide for a person to be liable for an offense. And that runs right throughout every single offense, whether it be murder, whether it be rape, whether it be larceny. You have to show that there was the guilty act and the guilty mind, and it coincides at the same time.
Okay, so you're saying then that crimes, and I guess this will help in the explanation if they're writing this. So you said that crimes can be broken down into elements.
Right.
Okay, and then the prosecution, then their role is to prove beyond, what is called a reasonable doubt.
Sorry, repeat that, please.
No, so the prosecution's role is to prove beyond a reasonable doubt.
Definitely, beyond a reasonable doubt that the jury must be sure of guilt.
Right. So,
of course, when you have situations where you have to show the intention generally. However, there are exceptions where you have what we call strict liability offenses, where the absence of the mens rea, or the intention, the absence of the intention, is not necessarily required. So it is that the police should find a firearm in the car trunk. Then they are going to charge that person for illegal possession of firearms. In fact, if you have 4 parties in the car, then they're going to arrest and charge. Unless one person comes and says that this is my firearm, then everyone will be charged for illegal possession of firearm by the mere virtue of the firearm being inside of the car.
Okay.
So we call it a strict liability offense.
Well, it's interesting that you'd have mentioned that because, sometimes when we, for example, when we read the news or listen to the news and we hear of some of these offenses, not necessarily knowing the backstory, the elements of terms of how it is broken down and assessed. And, there's something that I came across as well, and I think I want you to touch on that a little bit for me, that even in the introduction to criminal law, that concept about that not all crimes require a bad result, I don't know if you could expound on that a little bit for us.
I'm not sure if I know about that. Repeat that. Not all crimes require...
Right. So if a crime, does it require, in terms of looking at causation and harm, in terms of elements that, for example, the prosecution...
Okay,
right?
okay. Well, when you're looking at murder, for example,
yes,
you have to look at the aspect of causation. So you want to prove the nexus between the act and the accused. And so you have what is called, for example, the but-for principle, where you start what we call causation in fact. So you say, but for the defendant's actions, the consequences would not have occurred. But for me stabbing the other person, he would not have died. And you also now have to go further to look at what is the operating and substantial cause of the person's death. So you want to look now, was it the bullet wound that caused the person's death?
Yes.
Or was it a case where the man went to the hospital and after being stitched, it was the doctor had gave him an injection that he was highly allergic to? So you have to look at the cause of the person's death. And of course, the post-mortem report now would come into play, where you have to now look at what it is that caused the person's death.
All right, so and that's a lot to consider there. I want you to hold that point for me, and we're going to take our final break. And when we come back, we finish up this aspect of the module. You are listening to the A-Team Radio Show right here on Nationwide 90 FM. We'll be right back after this.
This outstanding 6'4" athlete credits Jamaica with her first Olympic victory ever.
Jamaica is filled with Olympians.
World record holder McKinley dashes into the lead.
We must never forget the forerunners of Jamaican Olympic greatness.
Coming into the home stretch, it's Wint who challenges the leader.
Win or lose, athletes never forget their Olympic experience.
Early Knocky has devastated another world-class field. And Hemmings is going to do it. Hemmings wins it. She's the champion. A personal...
Win or lose, Jamaicans will cheer the loudest at the Olympics so that the world will never forget who we are.
And Usain Bolt is moving away, and Jamaica retained their title, and the world record has been taken apart. I say.
From July 26 to August 11, tune in only to Nationwide 90 FM for the coverage of the 2024 Paris Olympic Games, because we're here to ensure that you never forget. Nationwide's coverage is powered by our bronze sponsors: National Road Operating and Construction Company Limited, Digital, Grace Foods, Spirits of Jamaica, Imperial Optical Jamaica, and Rainforest Caribbean.
Building wealth the smart way means you have a clear mission for your money. Specific and measurable means defining the reason for your financial goals. Achievable and realistic means keeping those goals meaningful, yet attainable. Think more retirement, less world's richest. Timely means keeping a time frame in mind so that all efforts remain focused.
Visit barita.com/opportunities for more growth coach insights.
Nationwide 90 FM is at it again. Team Revolution will clear every hurdle and sprint to the finish line as we cover the games of the 33rd Olympiad from Paris, the city of love.
3 meters clear, 5 meters clear, and away he goes. He continues on his way towards another gold medal. 5 gold medals, 5 world records.
Nationwide's coverage is powered by our diamond sponsor, Fosrich, fostering rich customer service across all locations island-wide.
Me sing, every pressure on no more. You illiterate and foolish, you might on a cook. And you now go get no work, and your teeth like a puss. Send me granny with a purse,
Welcome back to the A-Team Radio Show. We are focusing on Cape Law, Unit 1. And I have with me on the phone this evening Mr. Matthew Hyatt, an attorney at law, and he has over 8 years experience teaching Cape Law. And I just want you to know that tomorrow as well, if you are looking to get some final lessons in, I will perhaps share his contact with you that you can call and make some bookings as relates to final tutorials over the weekend. There is a Unit 1 session that takes place tomorrow, Saturday, May the 25th. And for more information, you can call this number, 876-589-4918. That's 876-589-4918. And that's Cape Law Unlocked. So please access all that you can over this weekend. So Matthew, a comment came in on our YouTube channel where this person indicated that they might also ask about constitutional supremacy. Is that something that students need to look at?
Could you repeat for me, please?
Oh, I was saying there's a comment on YouTube about the constitutional supremacy.
Yes.
Right, so they're saying that that's a possible focus area that may come on the exam?
That's correct. It didn't come last year. I'm looking at constitutional supremacy. You firstly want to look at the purpose of the Constitution. It is to govern the relationship between the government and its citizens. But the starting point for constitutional supremacy is Section 2 of the Constitution of Jamaica.
Yes.
It says that if it is that there's any law that is inconsistent with the Constitution, then so far as to the extent of that inconsistency, it shall be null and void. So that's the starting point when you want to look at the supremacy of the Constitution. Also, you want to focus on the case of Collingmore versus the Attorney General that provides useful guidance on the supremacy of the Constitution, remembering that the Constitution in Jamaica is a written document. We have it in black and white. And the Constitution provides, particularly in the Charter of Fundamental Rights and Freedoms, or fundamental rights. So you want to look at Chapter 3 as well of the Constitution. You want to ensure that you know what it means by entrenchment, that all rights are considered to be entrenched within the Constitution, meaning that it can't be arbitrarily changed by anyone. There has to be a 2/3 majority vote between what they call the upper house and the lower house in Parliament. So they have to vote before any amendment can be made to the Constitution. You'll recall that some time ago with the NIDS Act. The NIDS Act was actually struck down on the basis that it was considered to be unconstitutional.
Right. And, one of the things, Matthew, as you mentioned that, I don't know, because for students who are studying law now and looking at certain aspects of the law in its current form, I know that, for example, we are fast approaching or discussing matters relating to constitutional reform. The CRC is there. So, sometimes I wonder if within the classroom that they are the teachers linking some of these cases to current discussions that are happening in the nation to help to clarify the lesson.
I would expect that that's the case. Those are discussions that I would have from time to time, and I would think that that's the same discussion that teachers would have as well in terms of bringing the black and white into focus. Looking at what happens in the day-to-day realm of society and bringing it back so that the students can appreciate what it is that they are learning.
Right, and quite so, because we are still living in a time where information advances, technology advances, and we have to pay close attention to current affairs to see how we can apply the lessons or the principles from the law in that regard. Is there anything else that you think the students need to pay close attention to as we seek to kind of wind down for this evening? The exam is on Monday. What are some of your recommendations or your general tips as they approach the law exam? I know earlier on you'd have mentioned that sometimes it can be very nerve-wracking for the students. So final tips for them?
Answer what is asked. Answer the question.
Yes.
Don't fluff. If the question says explain, define, you want to look at those words and ensure that you allocate the requisite answer to the weighting to those answers. Don't write an entire paragraph for a 1-mark answer. That you won't gain anything by that in those circumstances. So persons think that they need to write 5 pages to impress the examiners. And you can really answer each question. When I say each question, each module, then
right.
You can cover an entire module with a page and a half. But you have to know the law. You have to be able to apply the law to the facts that is given to you and look at the cases. If the question says use a decided case, then you need to know the relevant case for that particular principle. So for example, if you are asked about transferred malice in criminal law, then one would expect that you would know the case of R.V. Latimer and perhaps the facts of the case and to explain what it is, or what is transferred malice using that case.
Yes. Before we go, I'm Sir Matthew, because another comment comes in here on YouTube, on our YouTube channel. Right, this question says, should all the questions be approached in a mini essay or using the IRAC method?
No. The IRAC method is used where you have what we call a fact pattern type question.
Right.
Normally it's a scenario, and they will say advise John Brown at the end, where you want to now look at what are the issues coming out of that question, what is the rule or the law, and application. You're taking back the facts of the question and applying the law to the facts that is given to you, and you conclude.
Conclusion, right.
The other questions may just be a little short answer question. Define what is murder. You may have a next question that may say, explain 2 elements of murder. You don't need to write an essay for that. That may be 4 marks. You just need to get to the point and write the case that you need.
Okay, and let's keep it simple, right? And just, as you said,
keep it simple.
And look at what the examiner is asking.
Don't overthink the questions, because one of the worst things you can do in the exam is you know the material and then you overanalyze and you misinterpret a particular question and you end up answering the wrong thing. But I just want to say that students ought to know as well offenses against the person.
Right.
And to look at it clearly. So you want to know the differences between murder and manslaughter. And they're 2 different things. When you look at manslaughter, you need to look at the differences between voluntary manslaughter and involuntary manslaughter and focus on the elements of each particular offense. So, for example, for a person to be liable for murder, you must prove that there was an unlawful killing and that there was an intention to kill. Because I can have an intention to kill you, Damien, but I have not done the act to coincide with that intention. And I can be driving on the road and you're crossing the road and I hit you down and you're dead. But I won't be charged for murder because there was no intention to kill you. But I may have been driving on the road recklessly and speeding. And so I would be charged for involuntary manslaughter in those circumstances.
Right.
So, students have to know the differences between murder and manslaughter. Look at the differences between what is an assault, battery, and so on, because those are questions that are likely to come in the exam. And most of all, know your defenses. There are several defenses, of course. I can't say you should know this one over the other, but students ought to study the defenses and to know generally, what is provocation, what is self-defense, be able to at least outline what the definition is,
right,
and what are the necessary ingredients to rely for a successful defense on whichever one that is being called upon.
All right. I want to say thank you. That's a lot there that we'd have covered from those modules, Sir Matthew. And I wanted to say thanks for coming on and speaking to us. One thing that... Yeah, man. And one thing that, you said that I wrote down, that we must apply the law to the facts given to you. So students, when you go into the exam on Monday and you're looking at the questions and you remember some of the case studies that you need to apply the law to the facts given to you. And that's not just for writing the exam. I believe that is a quote or a principle that we need to apply to our life. So thank you again. And again, I just want to close up by reminding us that if you would like to get some additional help with Cape Law Unlocked, the number you must call this evening and early tomorrow morning, because the sessions run from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. There is a cost attached, and the number is 876-589-4918. My guest this evening, Mr. Matthew Hyatt, attorney at law and a teacher of Cape Law for 8 years and counting. Until next week, when we come back, we will have another focus area for you. So stick and stay with us. Have a great evening. Have a great weekend. And I want to say thank you to our technical operator, Andrew Anderson. And this is Damien Scarlett saying good night. See you then.
If I see them, I hold your red and big tonight. You puke, we look and say, book. If you pressure on your book, if you not have no education, people treat you like a book. Turn you in a handyman, dog, food you have to cook. Them no want no candy man, no Barbican, no brook. So big up all the youths, a Casey, Woolmers and Meadowbrook. Me look and me sing and say, you now go to school, go on the bench and no chair.